Welcome everybody to the channel. This is Phil Beckwith, the professional painter and decorator, and this is just the intro. I'll say the intro, whatever you want to call it. This isn't actually the video that you want to be seeing. This is the preparation side of the job that I'm doing. Now, you've seen the thumbnail, you've seen the title. We are talking about roll-on plaster. Now, I'm going to put my hands up straight away. I'm going to put my hands up. I am not a plasterer. I'm quite practical and I can turn my hand to most things, but I am not a plasterer. And today's job is sorting out where an archway between one room to another has been boarded out. It's had the insulation acoustic panels in the centre, you know, that wadding, and then it's been double plasterboarded, and that's both sides. And because that wants skimming out and filling, it's what an opportunity to actually come in with some roll-on plaster. Now, the roll-on plaster I will be using, and we'll talk about that when we come on to that section of the video. Caparol, no sponsorship, but I will say thank you very much, Caparol UK, who have seen previous videos that I've done about roll-on plaster, and they actually rang me and said, Phil, we've seen what you've done on videos before. Do you know that we have a roll-on plaster that's been out since Noah was building an ark? I'm exaggerating, but they've had roll-on plaster out for a long while. So I've been sent this by Martin at Caparol UK. Thank you very much, Martin. I am going to be trying it, and I'm going to give you my feedback through a video like this to see what I actually think, not as a plasterer, but as a painter and decorator that can improve walls with a roll-on plaster, skimming it out, sanding it with a Mercer, then we're painting it, or if you wanted to, you could actually be wallpapering over the top. So this part of the video, what am I going to be doing? What have I done already? I've only got one side of this wall to do in this room. I've got the other side to do at a later date, but the walls have been vinyl silked. Now, not happy with vinyl silk to work over. They have all been sanded down with a Mercer. Don't go mad. I used 80 disc or a new 120 grit sanding disc on a Mercer. I've got the Laros. I've gone over all that wall to improve it. This clearly, you can't see on the camera so well, but this clearly highlights the old plaster that's not been fantastic. I've just knocked those off. I've even gone over that plasterboard that my brother-in-law's done because he is a dry liner and a bit of a plasterer. He's got that all brought up to the standard I need it. I've gone over it just lightly, just to take any high reliefs off. And the other thing that I've done, anywhere in the angles, I'm just looking at the screen, where the corners up here have been probably previously corked or filled, not very good. I've gone round with a Stanley blade, a snap-off blade, Alpha. Don't mention Stanley to Alpha. I've just cut anything out. They had a little bit of cork in. I've actually cleaned them all out, and at the side of that door frame. And again, you can probably just see here across the top of that ceiling edge where the coving is, where it wasn't a very good edge. I've just cleaned it and raked it out to make it a little bit of a sharper angle for me to work to. And obviously when I come to paint, it'll be a lot better as well. But what this part of the video is, what am I doing to prepare this surface ready for the roll-on plaster? Caparol's got a product. I'm going to lift it up. This, I'm not sure whether this is available in the UK or not. Now, this came from Caparol, and this was actually sent out via Paint Shack. Now, if you know the guys at Paint Shack, you know that they do Caparol. And this is the HaftGrund EG. Now, just think of this as your ceiling and wall primer on a par with half primer. So where half primer is used more for your woodwork and your trim if you're in America or on the continent, if you were using half primer before the finish coats on your woodwork, this HaftGrund EG, and this is called Capa Green, it's not green, it's white. This is what you use on surfaces to act as a primer coat. Because I've actually got a vinyl silk finish, I don't want to be going over with a roll-on plaster straight over that. So I've spoke to Martin at Caparol UK, and he advised using that, which I'd already got this in my YouTube studio. So it is an ideal opportunity to give this a try. So what I've done, I've tipped it out, I've mixed it up. I've not needed to thin it because it is quite, the viscosity of the paint isn't particularly thick. It'll be fine to actually be brushing over a vinyl silk surface. So I've literally got some out. I won't show you how to paint a wall, but I will be, if you can see, just brushing over that surface all the way around. It is, I'm going to sniff the bristle, it's quite an ammonia smelling paint. It is a water-based product, so you will wash brushes out with water. I am going to be going over all that area of this wall with a brush. If you wanted to use a roller, you could do. If you wanted to spray, if you got bigger areas, you could do as well. I'm going to brush this wall out. I'll go slightly onto the coving because I will be decorating this room in the next week or so once all this is all finished. But I will be coating this wall out with the primer, letting that dry. I will also coat out that bare plasterboard as well because that'll give it a better surface for me to use the roll-on plaster. I'll use this, let it dry, and then the main video we're coming on to using the, I don't know whether you can see that, let's try and zoom in a bit more. It's a very heavy tub. This is the AkkordRollspachtel. If you can speak German, please explain what that is, but I'm just going to say it's the roll-on plaster. You can apply this by an ordinary medium to longer pile roller if you've got one spare, or you could use the dedicated roll-on plaster sleeves that you've probably seen me use before. Do you know what? However you want to get it on that surface, you can do. I will be rolling it with a dedicated roll-on plaster, the wiry roller, but you can use an ordinary paint roller if you prefer. I will be getting it on this surface. I will be getting it smoothed out the best I possibly can. And what's going to be interesting about this video is Caparol UK have sent me this stuff, which is like a very fine mesh that you actually stick to the surface of that roll-on plaster. Smooth it all over, let it dry, and if you so wish, you can then go, which I'm going to recommend, going back over with a finer, smoother coat of the roll-on plaster to finish it all off. Once that's dry, you go with your Merca, sand it, then you can do whatever you want with that surface. And what I would be then doing is going back over with that HaftGrund over that dried roll-on plaster surface, and then that is ready to either paint or do your wallpapering or whatever finish you want to do over it. So that's where I'm going to be at the moment. I'm going to get all this wall coated up. I will see you in a little while when I'm ready to go with the roll-on plaster. So bear with me. This is just the intro to give you a little bit of a background on what I've been doing. The only other thing I would say that I've done as preparation wise, I have taken the skirting boards off because we will be putting a new one on, and just round the bottoms I have mixed up a bit of browning because a bit of plaster had fell away from the back area where the skirting boards have been. So I have gone round with some browning and got that all smoother. I'm not worried about painting over that because it is actually at the level of where the skirting boards are, so we're not having to go down as low as that with the roll-on plaster. But it has all been filled. I don't know whether you can see just down there, there's a corner that's just gone where the skirting board was, so that has been prepared as well. So I'll catch you later when all these walls are dry across here, and we will talk about the roll-on plaster. Thank you very much, see you in a bit. Welcome back. It's a good couple of hours since I did that, and I've coated, you can hear me, I'm just bending down. I've coated all that wall up and all that plasterboard up with the HaftGrund EG. That took a couple of hours to dry. It's nice and solid. I've literally just gone over with a fine sanding pad just to make sure that there's no, you know, bits of grit that's come out of where any holes were. That's not over the surface, and it's nice and smooth now. So I'm ready to go really with the roll-on plaster, and the roll-on plaster's just there. It's the AkkordRollspachtel, it's the roll-on plaster from Caparol. Now I've got the kits to put this on. I've got the roller, so I have got a dedicated that wiry roller to apply it. I've got the smoothers. I've got various smoothers from Brewers. You can, if you have a look in the link below, you can buy these sorts of things in my Amazon store, and I will say now that you don't pay any more for that product, but I do get a small commission from Amazon if you do purchase, so please help the channel by purchasing off my Amazon store. But you can get them from here, there and everywhere. These are the ones I've got. I bought these from Brewers, and full transparency, somebody did send me that one out to try, which I've not had chance to use, but I will on this wall because it is a bigger wall to try out, but all very similar. They all do the same job. They are what are going to smooth over that roll-on plaster on this surface. But what's different about this roll-on plaster video from other roll-on plaster videos that I've done, I have this fiberglass sheeting, whatever you want to call it, like as a mesh. This is Alsecco. Do you pronounce that Alsecco? Alsecco, and it's the I'll say what it is here. It's the fleece for embedding of stucco, storage, cool and dry. And for more information, seek out the technical data sheet. But the idea of this, and I'm going to say now, I said earlier, I'm not a plasterer. I'm learning as I go on this one. Every day is a school day if you've never done this sort of thing before, but every day is not a school day if you've got the basics. I have the basics, but I'm learning with a new product. So it'll be interesting to see how this goes. Now this is, can you see, it's like a very fine mesh fibre glass. And what I'll be doing is applying the actual, can you see, I'll move it, roll-on plaster to the surface. I don't need to be too heavy and thick with that. And then once I've got a section done, which will be really the width of this, which is roughly about 1 metre wide, I will drop this down over the surface and then smooth over that surface. I imagine there'll be a little bit of the roll-on plaster that will go through that mesh and it'll just smooth into that surface. Once I've gone all the way down to the bottom and cut accordingly, because it is on a big roll, I have got a bladed knife, that's a bit of a weird one. The Ulfa blade, I've got a brand new blade in there. I will cut to size off the roll, top to bottom, trim it at the bottom, get it on, move on to the next section, work all the way down, and then go over the whole lot, just final skimming it. Hopefully it will dry in the next couple of days. I'll be away on another job, coming back, and then I will go over the whole lot again with some roll-on plaster and then smooth it out. Once that's been smoothed and dry, I will sand it and it is good to go. Once you are sanded and good to go, you can do whatever you want with it. If you want to paint it, you can do. If you want to paper it, you can do as well. But what I will be doing, I will go back over with that HaftGrund primer just to give a good base for anything that I'm going to do in the future. I'm not sure whether this wall's going to have a wallpaper on it. If it's going to have a wallpaper, I'll probably use a fibre lining or a thicker 1000 lining paper, ordinary, over the surface and build it up. But we will have a fantastic surface to work over, because with me doing the roll-on plaster side of it, i.e. plastering it, I will get it smooth. Any undulations on that surface I will be obviously ironing out, and anything untowards will be sanded back to get it smooth with that Merkur. Now what I will do before I actually start filming doing a section, where I've got the gaps on the plasterboard, I will go with, I'll just get it here, I will go with some of the roll-on plaster, i.e. filler, and just fill up those areas just to help fill up that bit of back filling. You can see what I've done there, because I'm not sure how much will get pushed into those surfaces or gaps. So if I go round and just fill them with my filling knives now and just smooth them off, I know that they've actually got a good amount into those, well, I would say nooks and crannies, those crevices. So that's what I'm going to do. You can see what I'm doing now, just smoothing them out. And then once I go with the roll-on plaster, we will actually add to that and build it all up. So give us 10 minutes to do that, and then I will come back and see you in a couple of 10 minutes. I'm back, if by magic. Now I've just filled up those, you can just see what I've, hopefully, because we're on light colours, aren't we? I've just filled over those areas that are actually quite big gaps. Whether you need to do that or not, I'm not sure, but I feel happier in myself that I know that there is some of the roll-on plaster, i.e. filler, actually in those board joints, just to give a bit more support. Now the other thing that I just will mention, that where the skirting is taken off at the bottom, I don't know whether you can see much, I've still got a little bit of damp browning. I'm not too worried about that because I will not be going down as low as that. All I need to do is just cut slightly above where the skirting height will be, and the skirting's only about 3 inches if that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start that end and work the way along. I've got the roll-on plaster on the roller. That's a well bedded in roller because it's been used before, so there shouldn't be any little black hairy wires coming out of it. You'll see me particularly in that top corner. I'm looking at the screen now. Starting there, I will bring out the roller, not putting too much on, well over a metre, top to bottom. I have got a plug socket down there which I will cut round like doing wallpapering, so I can just get a little bit behind where the plug socket is. Don't worry about that, don't overthink it, but will say if you're a little bit unsure, make sure you turn your electrics off for your plug socket so you don't electrocute yourself. That's up to you. Health and safety is your responsibility. But I will do a section at a time, one drop at a time. I'm looking roughly about 3 and a bit. It's just under 4 meters, this wall here, from one side to the other. Height wise, we're probably looking at about 2.4 drop roughly. Don't quote me on that. So all in all, I think I've got this covered. I've got it mastered. Now I'm going to say to you, I think really you can just put this fibre stuff together, put it all close. Now, if you know a little bit more about it than me, please give some comments. This video is really for my training own purposes, to try and show people what there is out there that you can actually use to improve walls. And I know full well, by the time I've got my head wrapped around this and done it, this wall will be lovely. It'll be the best wall in the room for actually doing any other decorative finishes over the top. So let me get the stuff getting going. I've got the trowels there. I'm going to roll it and let's see how we go. I think you can hear me, you might not see me all the time. When you apply this stuff, don't put too much on. You only need a small amount, don't need to really build it up. If you've got areas that you do need to put a little bit more material on, feel free to build it forward if there's some humps and hollows, but it doesn't need to be that thick. And also I will say to you, when you roll it on, bed it all in. Don't go all the way to the top corners or the sides. Just give a little bit of tolerance because you will push that material into the sides and smooth over when you've got your scrapers and your smoothers going. So I'm going to crack on. You'll see me and I'll give you a conclusion when I've got the first length on. You can see what I'm doing. I've got just a nice amount on this surface and I'm smoothing it across, and actually not putting too much on has made it a lot easier to actually handle. Now I'm going into the corners there. I'm just, whatever is on the edge of the smoother, that's what I'm putting into that corner and dragging it back. I'm keeping that smoother quite flat to the surface to smooth it out. Now I'm not going to be too worried about any trowel marks on it at this moment in time because I will be coming back with the mesh, but for now we're doing quite well. I've also got my scraper, just my ordinary fiddling knife, just to go around any of the smaller areas that I might struggle with the wider smoother tool. But so far so good. I'm also going to say to you, with me putting that primer, wall and ceiling primer, that HaftGrund on the surface, it has taken out the porosity going over that bare plasterboard. Now clearly I've not got a problem going over a surface that had got vinyl silk on, but better to be safe than sorry. I've done all the surface and it has given me a very nice surface to work over and hopefully give me a good grip to what the adhesive needs to stick to the wall. I have to say it's a very nice, you can see it's a very nice roll-on plaster to work with. You want a bit more, just dab a bit more into the areas. Right, I'm pleased with that. I've got it on. It's actually quite nice and smooth. What I'm going to do now is drop down that mesh fiberglass from top to bottom. I'm not plumbing it in. It's not like doing wallpaper. You just get it on, because by the time that's actually gone on, been smoothed back over, and then you put the stuff back over the top, nobody's going to see what it's like. So let me get the mesh going, and I'll trim it down to the bottom, and then I'll show you what I do around the socket. Right, what I've done, I've just got the roll down at the bottom. I'm working off the roll like I do with wallpaper. I'm just dragging it up. I'm going to get it on to the wall and stick it onto the actual wet roll-on plaster that I'm going to be there. So because it's a good straight edge, I'm going quite close up to the top of the coving, pulling it across virtually into the corner. I'm happy with that. And then I will get my smoother just to work that in to the plaster, the roll-on plaster. I can actually feel a bit of the roll-on plaster coming through it. That's pretty good for a first attempt. I'm going to drop down to the bottom, I'm going to trim it off, and let's see what it's like around that plug. From the actual corner, I'm probably a quarter of an inch away from the actual corner. I'm not too worried about that. When we go back over with the second coat of that roll-on plaster, we will bridge that anyway. And so far, this is smoothing out really, really well for me. So if you can see, I'm coming down. I can see roughly where the skirting is. I'm just going to score across with the blade, go from the middle, down. Pull it away, that's done, nicely cut, cuts ever so easy. And now I'm just coming down to the plug socket. I'm just going to smooth it lower down. I can feel the corners, if I zoom in, I can feel the corners where the plug socket is. I'm not going to score the actual plug, but I'm just going to mark it, cut across, pulling it away, and then cut around the plug socket. It is really easy to cut. You could virtually rip it with your fingers. It's very, very fine mesh. It pulls apart as well. And I've literally just cut that plug socket size out. Now if you can see there, can you see the little fibres in that mesh? And that will hold that wall together. Hence why I'm not too worried if there are any little hairline cracks or bigger cracks actually in the surface, because that will hold it together. That's around the plug all nicely done. I use my ordinary scraper just to get into the smaller areas. All I'm going to do now is just bring it top to bottom to make sure it's actually sticking into that roll-on plaster using the smoother. And I'm quite happy with that. I'm very, very impressed. So I'm going to crack on with the next one, and I'll come back once I've got it on and I'll give you a bit of a recap on how it actually went, because we are going over the plasterboard area now. So hopefully I can put enough on to any areas that need a little bit of a build up, put this mesh on and virtually get a smooth wall, hopefully, at this stage. So far so good. Applied it, I did smooth it out just to try and lose some steps and undulations just where that plasterboard was meeting the original brickwork. So I did build up with the roll-on plaster that area there, and then I did use the smoother just to smooth it over. Now I'm going to probably say, you know, once you get into this and you get a nice amount on first time round, you probably don't need to be smoothing it like I'm doing. So that's probably something that with experience you'd say you've got enough on there, Phil, you can put the mesh fibre straight onto it. But I'm quite happy doing what I'm doing. It allows me to actually address any humps and hollows in that wall and build it out. But so far I'm quite liking what I'm doing. The overlapping, I didn't feel I need to be overlapping. You can just go as close as you possibly can, and if anything, if you haven't already put some of the roll-on plaster over the mesh that's already there, your mesh to mesh isn't going to stick, so it is probably a case butt joint it or get it as close as you possibly can. Another thing just to be mindful of, if you are rubbing your hand over it, it has got little fibres. Sometimes they feel a bit sharp. They're not going to cut you, I don't think, but it is a mesh fibre, so just be mindful of that. I think once it's all dried off and it's all actually in place, and with me smoothing it in and pushing it into that roll-on plaster, the second lot of roll-on plaster is going to go on quite nicely. So yeah, you know what, I'm talking too much. Let's get the last pieces on and then we'll have a look at what it's all like. Man on a mission. I'm going to say man on a mission, everybody, because actually doing that wall there, and I'm going to say just over, if these are about, there's probably just over 3.2 meters wide by what, 2.6 standard height of main rooms. It's not taken me long at all, and I've done the filming. Now what I would say is what I've learned from this: put enough on that you've got enough on for it to act as a sticky adhesive for this fibre to stick into. If you obviously scrape it out and you've got next to nothing on the surface, you're going to struggle getting it to actually adhere and stick. But I've found just smoothing it over, particularly where I'd got little bits, you can't see on the camera because we're now white, little bit of step between that original wall and where the plasterboard was, I did build it up with some of that roll-on plaster. So that, as it is now, actually feels quite, there doesn't feel a step in it. So I'm quite happy I've actually got that down. We've just smoothed it over carefully. If you over smooth, because the moisture of that roll-on filler stroke plaster is soaking into that fibre, you can probably catch it with your tool and just rip it slightly. So just be mindful of that. Right, I've come up to the door. I've got a fraction of a strip to go in just there. So what I've done, I've actually cut off freehand from the width of the roll, and I'm going to spin that there so you know what I mean. I've actually just a slither cut, probably just an inch or inch and a half, trimmed from one side to the other, and then put it into that gap there. Clearly I've just got enough adhesive in to hold it and press into place. I did do what I was saying. I've just got a little bit of a butt joint. There might be a slight gap on it. It doesn't really matter, but I think that is the way to do it. Somebody give us some comments below, because you can't overlap it unless you've actually got some of the roll-on plaster there for it to adhere to. So it is a case of getting up as close as you possibly can. But what I've done with this is really made sure that none of the verticals corresponded with, I can just see a faint hairline, dark a bit there, where the joint of the plasterboard was against the wall. So as long as you're not corresponding with that, I don't think there's anything to really worry about. And I'm going to say again, I will be going back over this with Can you see it there? The roll on in the next couple of days when this has actually dried off, and then smoothing it back out again and then sanding it. I will come back with the camera so you can actually have a look at that. But once that's all on, and it is sanded down with a Merker carefully, because you don't want to sand through what you've put on to get back to this. You just want to take off any highlighted reliefs that might be trowel marks from rolling it on and smoothing it. Once you've done that, then you can do what you want to do with it. And as I said, I will go in with that HaftGrund and then give that the primer coat, and then I will probably, I might even wall rock fibre liner over it again, because it might have a feature wallpaper on it, depending. It might be a case that I can just get away with painting it. Just depends what my sister, because I'm at my sister's house, what she wants to do with this wall. But so far so good. I'm really pleased. I will see on the next segment of this when we're actually doing the final rolling on. But yeah, it's looking quite good. I'm quite impressed, and I'm not a plasterer, but if I can do it, you can do it. No need to get a plasterer in. Welcome back. I said to come back a couple of days later. Now we've blended out from earlier this week to later this week. That fibre, let's call it a fibre mesh that's gone on, I was a little bit apprehensive about whether it would adhere and stick to the surface that I've actually rolled on. And you know what? Coming back a couple of days later, it feels solid. I don't feel, I've ran my hand over it, I don't feel any areas that feel ballooned or caravaned and, you know, like bubbled up. It feels like it's on really well. Now, I did do more of a butt joint against it. I have been told you can actually overlay it and then cut through to get a splice if you want that perfect joint. But for this wall, it wasn't too bad, so long as that mesh went over the area that was going to, as long as that area was covered where the boarding was done, I wasn't too worried about how close that butt joint was or not. So all good. What I've got to do today is go over it with another layer of that roll-on plaster from Caparol. What I did before I left a couple of days ago, I did go around the edges up at the top. I'll point, I'm looking at the screen, I just went around the tops and the sides just with a filling knife, just to smooth any of the rougher edge off that might have been a little bit textured, because I just thought if it was nice and smooth for coming back today, it'll make it a lot easier for me to float over with the skimming tools, the skimming blades. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm just going to get some out on that roller, start applying it. Do it like I've done on previous other videos. Just do probably a square metre, half a metre at a time, and then trowel it across. You don't need to put it on too thick. If you put it on a nice smooth, a couple of mil thick, if that probably be plenty. What you want to be doing is making sure that if I can feel any little bits of hollows where that opening was, or any imperfections, just put enough on to actually bridge that area. I'm just running my hand down there. I can just feel where the butt joint was of the plasterboard to the wall, and it's slightly sunk in, but only slightly. You can see it more because it's pulled over that fibre, you know, it's stretched itself. So as long as I put enough on and it bridges across there, I don't think I'm going to have any problems. And when I come back tomorrow and we sand it lightly, I think we'll find that wall is virtually perfectly smooth. Since I've seen this product, they do other products very similar to this, a very, very fine mesh version that if you use the Caparol range of paints, you can actually put it straight onto a wet layer of paint and it soaks straight in. And you can use that as like a bit of a webbing to strengthen up or improve your walls. And then once that's all dried, you could just give it a little bit of a nib down and then give it a final coat. And that's another process that Caparol do. Probably in the future, I might try something like that just to demo it. If I speak to Martin at Caparol again, it might be something we could probably just demonstrate and show people what the other products are. But let's crack on with this, and I'll see you a bit later on. You can see me doing it and we'll talk it through, but I'll come back tomorrow, we'll sand it, and then we'll have a perfect surface to get that primer, that HaftGrund primer straight onto there to give me a base for anything else I want to do in the future. So catch you in a few gnat cyphals, catch you in a few seconds. I'm not going to make this boring for you. I've just loaded up the roller as per usual. I'm going to do what I've normally done, just roll it over the surface, press it on, because you are going over a more drier fibre now. Get it as close as I possibly can. Just do a small square up at that top. Get my smoother and just lightly smooth over that fibre. You pick up a little bit more at a time, you can move it around with you. And a good tip is, when you're actually smoothing over, don't put it on a steep angle like that. Keep it quite flat. Being quite flat will allow you to smooth it a lot easier than trying to go like that, because it takes it off. So put it on as a smooth, flat smoother. Easy as that. Let me just get you in a bit closer. Can you see what I've done? I've just done that patch there. It's probably about 2 foot by about another 2 foot. It's only a square. But I've put a little amount on and I've smoothed it over that surface. From it having that texture of it being a fibre, I've now got, I'm going to put my finger across it, literally only a couple of millimeters worth of roll-on plaster, and it's made that fibre disappear to have a wet plaster surface over it. The roll-on filler, whatever you want to call it. So let me crack on. I'll show you what it looks like all at the end. Right, coming back to you, probably been about 15 minutes. I've done a good third of that wall from that top corner down, I can't say my words, down to the bottom, round that plug socket and round the plug socket. I've been very careful and I've just used one of my all-way, nice, what's that, about a 3-4 inch scraper, just to get round that socket neatly. Now, I'm going to give you top tip Tuesday. I've struggled a bit putting it on with that roller, so halfway down I actually started trying with the trowel, just one of those, applicating it, putting it on with the actual trowel like that, putting enough on to a couple of mil thickness, and then finishing off with the smoother. And do you know what, I found it a lot easier and a lot quicker. I could regulate how much I was actually putting on, and where I was using the roller, a bit was dropping off because it was rolling around and flopping. It was difficult to try and get it to stick evenly over that. It's a bit of a shiny mesh. Now the light's changing in this room, you might see it a bit easier. So what I've done, and I'll probably just say trial and error, applying it by that. If I just pick up a little bit, if I pick up a little bit on that trowel and just put a bit on like that and smooth it, to get it over the surface was a lot easier. And you're going to probably shout at the screen and say, Phil, that's a lot easier way to do it anyway. Well, I've found out the hard way, haven't I? Because I've used the roller to try and get it on, and it's not as easy as I thought it would be. But putting it on like this, I could then actually build up over those areas which are a little bit sunken in, because it's gone in where the gaps and the plasterboard joints were. I'll just show you this, and then look, that is a lot easier, and then just floating it back into what I've already done. no problem. If you get a little bit of a trowel mark, I'm not too worried about that because that will be likely sanded off when I come back tomorrow just to nib it all over. I won't need to go mad with a coarse merker. I will see how I go, just roughly doing it, well, roughly doing it by hand because it is quite a smooth surface anyway. Right, I've got done. I'd probably say about an hour, probably just over an hour to get that right, and I've done a bit of filming. I've smoothed it over a lot better using that corking, or whatever you want to call it, a filling knife. I mean, that's quite a one too. It was about 8-inch filling knife. To apply, to put the actual roll-on plaster on was a lot better on that meshy fiberglass. Once I've smoothed it out with a smoother, I'm quite happy with that. There are some little, you probably can't see so well on here, there are some little troweling marks that's just the floating out edges. I'm not worried about that because by the time I come with a bit of a sander, I'll use a block sander just to nib off those highlights. They will all go. There were areas that I could just see that would just, it's probably where the joints were, just, I don't know, blowing up slightly. It's probably a case that the gap and the air's coming through it, but I'm not too worried about that either. I've floated those out. There's plenty of that roll-on plaster just there that I can actually come back and just nib it back and sand it smooth. Now, all in all, I'm quite happy with that. The idea is, what I'm going to do is just give it a light sand over, put a coat of that HaftGrund over it as the, like a base stabilising primer. And then, depending on what I'm going to do with this room, and this room's going to be done at some stage, I might actually get that HaftGrund over that roll-on plaster, and then in the future it'll probably have a lining paper or something like that, because this could be a wall that's a feature wall in this room. But even if it's not a feature wall, the lining paper over that surface, whether it be a fibre liner like a wall rock or an Albany reinforced lining paper, it's all a good surface for anything that goes over it, even if it's going to just be emulsioned with a durable paint as well. So that'll be a nice surface for me to work on whatever I do to it. So I'm going to say see you later. I don't think there's any thing untoward just to mention on here, because this has been quite an easy float out. There's some areas here that I've had to put a little bit more on when I've troweled it and smoothed it out, because that's where the corner was of the plasterboard to the original brickwork, that I could just see a little bit of a hollow. So that was just nicely built back up. Once I'd done the wall, I went back to it and put a little bit more product onto the surface, which actually isn't a problem to do if you want to just do a bit of a build up like that. The wall is still a little bit damp, it's not fully dried, so while it was still in that state, I could actually just blend it across. But as I've just said, even if there are little areas that do want a bit of a sand down, it doesn't really matter, because when you sand it down, you'll lose that, I'll just call it a fatty edge of the roll-on plaster that's just on that surface. So I'm expecting this to be quite smooth when I come to it tomorrow, and then we can just get that paint on and have a look at it and say it looks fantastic. I'm not a plasterer, I'm a painter and decorator, but I've sorted this wall out in the space of a few hours over a few days. So if I can do it, anybody can do it. I will just mention this is an 18 kilo tub, and I've got about that much left. Now that much left is enough that if I do want to check over anything tomorrow when I've sanded it down, I can actually do some fine surface filling with it. But let's just wait till we see what it's like when we've actually got it sanded down before we make any decisions on that. So catch you tomorrow. Welcome back. We're on the next day. We're on probably the final day of actually getting this brought forward and getting some paint on it. Now, it's obviously clearly had 24 hours from me blending out from this last video to where I am now. I'm looking at it. I can see the little bits of trowel marks and little rimples in it, but what I have got a merker, but I think the merker might be a little bit too vigorous. I'm only needing to just take the surface off. So I've got one of these sanding blocks, you know, these pads with some sandpaper on. I'm just going to do a spirally circle motion like that, just get any of the highlighted relief off. And I've also got one of the sear pads. I don't know whether you've seen these before. They're a sponge, they're a P150. They're quite a coarse one in fine sanding pads. But do you know what? That just going over the surface, I can feel it with my hand where I need to put it. Don't need to put too much pressure on, and I'm going like that. And I will show you a close-up in a bit. That is actually going lovely and smooth. So let's not bore you with sanding a wall down. If you have got a Merkur, you'd probably be a little bit quicker, but I think a Merkur could be a little bit too energetic. I'm going to use the word energetic actually on that surface. But all in all, it's actually not come up as a bad surface. If I'm going to be honest, I think this is the first time that I've done this sort of thing with that mesh, that fibre mesh. I think next time I use it, I would probably apply a little bit more of the roll-on plaster to the first layer and then put the mesh onto it, because as you saw at the beginning, I did actually smooth it out as well to get a more even, flatter surface for the mesh to actually go on. Whether that's the way you do it or not, or whether somebody who's probably using this all the time and say, Phil, you just bang a load of this stuff on and then push it down through the mesh, I wouldn't like to say. But what I would say is that mesh is quite fine, and you don't even need to use a blade to cut it. You could rip it apart with your fingers. So you've got to be very careful that you're not going in with a tool that's going to damage that surface because you've actually pressed a bit too hard onto it. So I'll probably say where I am with this at the moment, I'm quite happy with it. We can't see where that archway, passageway between two rooms was. I've done what it needed to, it's done what it needed to do. And we can't see where the actual archway was, other than I can just see the little bits of prouder area that I've just got to nib down. But once I've nibbed it down, I'm going to give it a coat, and then I'll come back and we'll have a quick look at what it looks like. But so far so good, and yeah, I've probably saved £1,000, haven't I, really, for not having a plasterer in? Probably. Comments below. I think it looks like I've done a line of coat, doesn't it? I've got dust around my nose because I've just rubbed my nose. How fun is that? That wall has sanded down lovely, and I have to say I've probably gone over majority of the wall just with that Sear flexible sanding pad, which is the P150. With me being able to do it by hand, I can actually feel the contours of the surface, and particularly where I'd got some little highlighted raised relief, I've managed to just nicely sand that out without too much problem, really. I think if I had gone in with a Merkur or electrical mechanical sander, I think the vibration of that wouldn't have done the surface particularly any good. You know, you'd have pressed a little bit too hard and gone through more of the roll-on plaster than you'd probably require or want to do. But this has just taken the highlights off with the trowel marks. I can see a few little imperfections where it's probably where I've just not put enough product, and it's not, I'll just see a little bit there. I could probably rub that out a bit more, but I'm not too worried, because you know what? I'm going to go now with that HaftGrund, which is really the equivalent to a wall and ceiling primer, which is your half primer for your woodwork. This is the HaftGrund for your walls and ceiling. So it's really a primer surface for me working over in the future. So what I'm trying to say is, if you have got some imperfections after you see it, once you've got that primer coat on, you can just go around with a little bit of fine surface filler if you're really picking up on them and you're seeing them. But as I've said, I think I've got a feeling I'm going to be lining this wall anyway to get a little bit extra build up on this wall, because we went from concrete to a partition that's been studded out and 2 lots of plasterboard with that acoustic wadding in between. So I think to make a nice surface, I probably will be lining it, but if you did want to, you could just go straight over with your emulsions over that HaftGrund and you know that you've got actually a decent surface. So I'm going to do what everybody else does. I've got a brush here, I've got the tub of paint. I'm going to go. See you later when this wall's done. Right, I'm just coming in with the HaftGrund and I'm priming it, and I know some people are going to say, when I've sanded it down, obviously that surface is a little bit dusty. What I've done, I've gone over it with dusting brush and a soft sweeping brush to get anything down. If you do go over with a vacuum cleaner, just be mindful that you don't want to bang the vacuum cleaner end into the surface and damage it. Likewise, there's some people that have probably got, you know, those mops that everybody's fashionably using on TikTok at the moment to dust down. Just be mindful that you don't want to be creating dust all in the room because you're flapping it all about. So just be mindful of that, just dust off the surface carefully, and then you're ready to go with your painting, and that's what I'm doing now. So I'm going in with the HaftGrund in that top corner, and I'll see you when I've done it. I said if by magic I'd get that wall coated up, and I have done, and that was using the Monarch. I've washed the brush out now. Give Monarch a plug because these are really nice brushes. If you are still a decorator that does painting and wants a 4-inch brush for emulsioning, the advanced range from Monarch brushes, they do a lovely 4-inch, and I've just brushed that wall. That wall, well, what did we say? Just over 3 meters by about 2.4 on height. It takes me probably about half an hour to brush that. What's nice about brushing a wall, I can control how much actual paint goes onto that surface, particularly with that primer coat going over that roll-on plaster. So I've not got to do any cutting in, I've not got to do any rolling, I've not got an orange peel effect on there because that HaftGrund goes on that surface without having to thin it. It's actually quite a thin, the viscosity is not very thick. If you did want to thin it because you felt a bit happier because you've got a very porous surface, you could thin it slightly, but do you know what, that goes on straight out to the tin. But all in all, I'm really impressed with how that wall's come up. I can feel a little bit of a, let's say, humps and hollows. It's minuscule. In the bigger scheme of things, how bad that wall was, I've improved that wall immensely. And as I said at the beginning, I am not a plasterer, but I've used a product that a decorator or a DIYer could use to improve the surfaces of the walls. Yes, I've used that fibre mesh, which does it add any benefits to it? I think it just holds it together a little bit better. And as we're coming up to the conclusion of this, what would I do any different? I'd probably apply that first coat of roll-on plaster a little bit thicker. Not too much because we need to put too much on it, but just enough to get a little bit more adhesion between the roll-on plaster and the fibre liner. But other than that, it's gone on well. I mean, that wall's now dry, but it still feels a little bit damp because it's not been done that long, but the primer has actually soaked into there quite nicely. When I come back to do this room, and I've spun around before and shown you what we've got to do, I will probably line that wall anyway. So we've got an extra layer of, I'm going to call it insulation, but it'll just make that wall even better than what it is now. But I will be working over a proper, nice, smooth wall. That what I had before was a bit of a bodger, wasn't it? I mean, we got a archway that we didn't want. That's all been filled up. But even there, I'm just putting my hand there. There was a little bit of a step which I've managed to get rid of because I've done that roll-on plaster, and that's what I wanted to do. I think all in all, for my first attempt of using the Caparol system for the roll-on plaster with the mesh, I'm quite happy with that. Going forward, I think I'm going to be even more of an expert, because the more you practice, the more you do, the better you probably get at what you're doing. And if you're doing it regular, you're on to a winner. But all in all, I'm going to say thank you very much to Martin at Caparol UK. Thanks for supplying these products for me to try. It's been very interesting, and I'm going to say please watch the videos at the end. Anybody that's doing me a super thanks, thank you very much. That's down below. And those that are doing me buy me a coffee, that is much appreciated, because the actual buy me a coffee, they take a smaller percentage from that buy me a coffee than what the super thanks do. So it all goes towards helping that channel grow, which is my channel. So yeah, watch the videos at the end. Thank you very much everybody for watching. I know it's been a long-winded one, but I hope this gives you a bit of an insight onto how to improve your walls if you want to do it yourself. I don't know, the burning question will be, how long does it take me? It's probably taken me about an hour and a half at a time on this wall, which I don't think that's too bad, is it?